So when I first started teaching, I began to notice generational differences between me and my law students. Started with an occasional reference to a 90s TV show and blank stares to decoding internet lingo and emoticons. I began to explore how generational differences impact teaching as a lawyer. This is not a picture of my student out investigating, finding the perfect selfie moment. Perhaps this photo shows us the barrage of oh my OMG, hashtag I just voted, to documenting our friends and families every moment. These quick social media connections have accelerated the bystander onlooker phenomenon. Social media creates onlookers happy to post and tweet without much engagement. Internet photos and statements are followed by hashtag do something, hashtag human rights, hashtag poverty, hashtag hunger. Malcolm Gladwell mockingly calls this new activism the new slacktivism or armchair activism. He claims 50 years after social upheaval in America, we seem to have forgotten what activism is. He claims that people must have a personal connection in order to be engaged. If personal connection is key, listening to my parents and grandparents tell stories about de jure segregation in the South and moving to the North to find de facto segregation, and my grandfather serving in the Navy only to come home to a segregated US, facilitated my engagement with social justice advocacy. Further, interning in a refugee center in Strasbourg, France with a young Afghani boy fleeing persecution placed civil rights in a human rights framework for me. And I began to explore how human conditions can be changed through social justice advocacy. While 1960s lawyers spearheaded civil rights and anti-Vietnam and women's and students' movements, Gen Xers feel somewhat removed from this sort of activism. So as a professor, the question became for me how to facilitate law students' meaningful engagement with legal institutions. I teach my students the power of implementing small, simple ideas and their potential to produce butterfly effects. The idea is that everyday small acts of service can facilitate and affect systematic change. Clinical legal education is the scaffolding which was created in the 1960s to provide hands-on experience to law students to service real, live, indigent clients in learning by doing. UT Law School has the longest continuous running clinic in the country. Clinical legal education provides a framework for bridging generational gaps. The world is the classroom, and the learning goal is to inspire students through developing individual connections with clients. We work on issues globally, locally, and nationally. I continue my work with refugees and migrants with law students. Our clients are vulnerable populations whose race, class, and gender and social economic status intersects to limit access to the justice system. They are people who have been traumatized by war, who have traveled to the US alone, and they're victims of domestic violence. Clinical legal education moves from the banking model of education, where the student is a vessel to be filled with knowledge, to the student as an active learner and co-creator of knowledge. Through clinical legal education, the law comes to life from the theoretical pages of the textbook. I took this next picture while volunteering in Swaziland with my law student. Swaziland in 2010. Swaziland has a population of 1.25 million. It's the smallest country in Africa, but has the highest AIDS rate in the world. Numerous children are orphaned and are forced to live with their grandmothers. Pictured here in this next picture is my student engaging with grandmothers in an informal setting on the grass to combat policies for AIDS orphaned children. In this informal setting, she was engaged in creating policies to help AIDS orphaned children. During the spring of 2014, law students were paired with pro bono attorneys to conduct immigration consultations for local immigrant families with the organization Centro Hispano in Knoxville. The goal was to facilitate access to attorneys providing knowledge regarding possible forms of immigration relief for clients. This resulted in the students learning about the immigrant community in Knoxville, the complexities of navigating through the Immigration and Nationality Act, and learning the implications for immigration reform. The students learned to interview and developed a cultural acuity in interviewing diverse clients. Clinical law students recently traveled to Artesia, New Mexico in October 2014, the center of the humanitarian crisis on the southern border, where women and children from Central America were being detained in small trailers. Prior to pro bono intervention by attorneys, the women and children were deported without due process hearings. In this selfie-like moment with my students here, the students are providing legal representation to women and children seeking asylum. They successfully represented women who were released on bond and conducted intake interviews for a legal representation. These experiences help students to develop a conscious engagement with the legal system, to develop their skills in a national and global context. And then I educated the law students about practicing law. They were able to move beyond surface level engagement with the legal systems in its institutions. As a clinical professor, my goal is to spark a passion in each one of my law students while empowering them with the skills to be critical thinkers and to go beyond surface level engagement with the legal system and its clients.